everyone. The Committee on the Budget and Government Operations is called to order. This morning we have 4 items on the agenda, but before we get started, I wanted to cover a couple of things. One, I hope each of you have received the COFA report, which is a summary of the 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. We also have copies here for you if you did not receive it. I'd also like to introduce you to the newest member of the Council Office of Fiscal Analysis, Kenneth Williams, if you would stand and just let people see who you are. And Jonathan Silverstein, who's also a member of that office, and there will be some additional people added, but those are people that you can speak to now. Secondly, I just wanted to let people know that the 2020 budget forecast, which was mailed to you and also put in your City Hall mailboxes, is also available here this afternoon or this morning if you haven't received it. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the monthly Rule 45 report, approval of the July monthly Rule 45 report for the Committee on the Budget and Government Operations. Do I have any questions from my colleagues regarding item number 1? Do we have any witnesses on that? No witnesses. Do I have a motion on item number 1 on the agenda? Moved by Alderman O'Shea. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion made by recommending do pass. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The second item on the agenda is from the Office of the Mayor, a communication from the Honorable Lori E. Lightfoot, Mayor, reappointing Christopher P. Valenti as a member of the Chicago Public Library Board for a term effective immediately and expiring on June 30th, 2022. Mr. Valenti, if you would join us up front, please. Everyone should have a copy of his resume. And while he's walking up, I just also want to acknowledge Andrea Tellis, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Library, of the Public Library. Mr. Valenti, thank you for being here today, and if you could tell us a little about yourself and address the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Dowell. Great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for making time to meet me and hear a little bit about myself. Thank you, Chairman Dowell and members of the committee. My name is Chris Valenti, and I come before the committee seeking confirmation for my reappointment to the Library Board. I was born in Chicago in 1965 and was raised on the Northwest Side in Edgebrook along with my 6 siblings. I have very fond memories spending much of my time at Wildwood Public School playing basketball in the indoor gym until the doors closed at 10 p.m. It was a great place to grow up. Then after 10 p.m. we'd go in the park and play until 11 p.m. in the outdoor courts until the police kicked us out and sent us home. What a great community Wildwood Park was to our family and Edgebrook. Needless to say, I didn't spend enough time in the Edgebrook Public Library, the old storefront right by the metro station. But today, there's a gorgeous new separate branch library right in Edgebrook, and our community's so proud to have that library at that location. A little bit about myself. My father started our family construction company in 1938, and he was a pioneer building bungalows in Chicago, the first one located at 6045 Roscoe. We are a Chicago family with 100 years history in this great city, and we're big fans of anything and everything about Chicago. I've lived my entire life in Chicago with my wife, and our children are being raised in this city. We have the benefit of being able to walk to the Lincoln Park Branch Library, which is such a joy with our children. I'm a construction and real estate professional here in Chicago. I enjoy urban architecture, planning, and assist with the Chicago Public Library with some of our co-location branches. I'm also an active investor in 1871, which you may know is an incubator at the Merchandise Mart. So I've enjoyed my years of service at the Chicago Public Library, and am happy to serve in this role. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valenti. Alderman Austin?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Valenti, since your previous appointment, what other libraries have you attended besides the ones that you've just spoken of?
Alderman, we have regular meetings at our branch libraries, 82 branch libraries, so it's wonderful to be able to experience all the different neighborhoods that we serve, and it's especially exciting to see, since 1995, the improvements to the library system and our work in getting more equitable distribution of these assets in each and every community. For instance, our board is so excited about the Altgeld Gardens project, which is about 50% complete now, under construction. So we have been very attuned to how can we more equally provide our services throughout the city of Chicago. One other item that I think was interesting is some co-location opportunities. As you may recall, we did 3 branch libraries in conjunction with CHA. Very successful, very beautiful buildings, serving 3 different communities. There might be more opportunities for those type of projects in the future.
Well, are your meetings scheduled for various libraries, and do you have a schedule of where they're at? The reason why I'm asking, because I would like to know, when do you have your meetings at West Pullman on the far south side, which is down from Art Grill?
I see, yeah. Well, our next library meeting is September 18th at Independence Branch. They are published. We have 4 meetings a year, and they are published, and we do meet at the different branches throughout the system.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Madam President, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Austin. Alderman Napolitano.
Thank you, Chairman. You could just call me Anthony or Naps, too. It's always easier. Mr. Valenti, glad to have you. Oh, yes, glad to have you. Good to see a good Northwest Side gentleman sitting on the board. All I'd say is, if you can, put on your list Road and Library. It's by far probably one of the most dilapidated, but yet kept as well as it can be, libraries that is out there right now. So I know you have a lot on your plate, but if it can be one that you put on the list to take a look at, we'd love to have you out, see if we can maybe do something in the future, or at least a rehab of some sort would be terrific. But I'm glad you're coming back. Thank you for your service. Appreciate what you do, and the Northwest Side's very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Valenti. First and foremost, thank you for your service. Glad to see that you've been retained by the new mayor and the new administration to continue on all your years of success at the library board. But I do want to talk a little bit, since you brought it up, about co-locations. You mentioned that there are 3 co-locations that are in partnership with Chicago Housing Authority, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many are in? How many co-locations exist with Chicago Public Schools?
I believe it's 1. 2, our commissioners here.
And forgive me, I'm not meaning to throw you on the spot, but
That's okay.
I think
it's okay. 2 locations in public school.
One of which is in my ward, I believe, the back of the yards college prep. You know, I believe that was about 5 or 6 years ago that the CPS co-locations started, and they have subsequently stopped, I believe. Has there been any follow-up to see from the library board's perspective, or the commissioner, if she's here and chooses to answer, but to see, has that been a successful co-location effort? Because I've heard concerns from the community that even though the fact that they were well aware that they were co-locating and cohabitating with each other in a CPS building, at least in the one that I'm familiar with, the one in the 15th Ward's back of the yards community, there seems to be some consternation. The inability for the school to have access to the library, the fact that being a public library, it still has to be open to the public, and all of the individuals that come into a public space, as we all know, aren't necessarily there just to check out a book and read. While being housed in a facility that is only one door away from the 1,000 community students who are in that building. Is that something that's on your radar? Have you guys done any kind of follow-up? Or is there a push to move away from that model from either you, your peers, or just general conversation?
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. It's an excellent point, and our board has not had discussions regarding those matters. So it hasn't reached our level at the board level discussing co-locations, how they're operating now or future opportunities.
Okay. Well, what I would suggest, what I would recommend for yourself and for Ms. Block, who I think is coming up after you, and if she's here, I'll just say the same thing for her as well. That you take this message back with you to your board to see what the status of these co-locations are. Because if this is not a model that is workable,
Alrighty.
if this is a model that is causing more questions and limiting access and not doing what we had hoped it would do, which is to create a library facility inside a public school that students can use for homework, that students could use for safe space, that students could use to expand their mental horizons, then I would strongly recommend that the board, at least for this one and possibly even for the other one, wherever it may be, look at the possibility of disassociating itself from these co-locations and looking at, in the future, what we can do for those two neighborhoods who are kind of with a library and yet without one.
All
Thank
right.
you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Taylor?
Oh, I just want to echo what Alderman Lopez said. While the library is in the 15th Ward, constituents from the 20th Ward visit. And I get the complaint all the time, the students, especially seniors and juniors, aren't able to use the library during certain times because it is a library. This does not make sense. I hadn't seen anywhere where it existed. And at one time, if I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong, that library was across the street actually in the mall. And nobody really could explain to me what was the thought process behind the co-location. And so, and also I have Sherman Park library in my community, which needs some construction, and it seems like they've outgrown that space. And so I want us to have some real conversation because it serves the back of the yard community and also New City in my community. They do a lot of programming, and they have not had any upkeep really done to the park in some years. And so I want you all to go and look and see what type of support you can get that library.
Thank you, Alderman Taylor.
Thank you, Alderman Taylor. Alderman Spizzato, followed by Alderman Hairston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Valenti, thank you for stepping up again. We appreciate that. I know this is a reappointment, so this is your second term, so thank you much for that. I personally think the libraries are awesome. I have two awesome libraries in my ward. And actually, your boss is from the Northwest Side also, so we have another Northwest Sider there. So, but appreciate you. But my colleague and me over here, we're just having a little debate. This will probably be the easiest question they had to answer. We're debating. We're not concerned about what college you went to. We're concerned about what high school you went to. So, are you a Loyola Rambler or are you a Notre
Yes.
Dame Don?
Loyola Academy,
Well,
sir.
okay, he won. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you, Alderman.
Alderman Hairston.
Morning, I'm over
Hello.
here. I think I was on Taylor Street, and I saw the public library, the mixed use.
Yes.
Is that a public-private partnership?
No.
The library with the housing on top?
Yes. No, it is not. It's a public, 100% public.
It's 100%?
Yeah, CHA above and CPL library on the ground floor.
Is that the only one in the city?
There's 3 CHA co-location sites which were opened with the previous administration.
And where are those?
So there's one on the Taylor Street one you mentioned, one at Independence Branch, as well as Northtown is the third one.
And
All 3 recently opened.
okay, and so have there been any that have been done without CHA?
No.
Not here in the city?
No.
Are there any more planned for the CHA?
Our board has not been discussed any future plans for co-locations.
Okay. And so, I mean, it's a really good thing. I know they've done it in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And so I was just wondering if you're looking at any public-private partnerships for the city that is not CHA.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. I think it's something our board and along with the commissioner and her team should discuss in the future. It's a wonderful model. It's
Yes,
often
it is.
used, as you well know, in Europe. They do this often
Yes,
with
yes.
public libraries and housing above.
So I hope that you all will consider that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hairston.
Thank you, Alderman Hairston. Mr. Valenti, before we go to public speakers, I just wanted to thank you and the library for the work that you did with the Chicago B Branch Library. And also to ask you if you could talk about perhaps the priorities that you have for the library board moving forward.
You know, it's a wonderful board. There's a lot of great input there. I think it's so impressive what this library system has done, especially since 1995, continuing the great work and making our services more equitable throughout the system. I mentioned Altgeld Gardens. What a wonderful project that will be when it opens. It's going to be gorgeous, and it's in such a deserving community. I have read about an opportunity for Sunday hours, which I think, you know, might make sense. I do know that the commissioner and her team are reviewing this with City Hall, and it has not been brought to the board level yet. But boy, what a wonderful opportunity it would be to open some libraries for Sunday hours. So I think that might be a priority. I know that there's some, you know, significant dollars related to that, but I think that's would be a wonderful opportunity for our patrons that we serve. You know, there's always more ways to enhance our programming and our partnership opportunities in the communities, whether it be additional corporation sponsorships, or with some of the program that we do through the foundation at the public library. And, you know, it goes without saying, the OPC, Obama Presidential Center, our board and our team we're so excited that we have the potential of putting a Chicago Public Library branch within that facility, which will be outstanding for that community. So a lot of work still left to do on that front, but I would consider that one of the priorities as well.
Thank you, and I have a couple of more questions. Alderman Thompson, followed by Alderman Austen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Valenti, I just wanted to commend you and thank you again for your previous service and your willingness to continue on the board. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. Creative ideas. The two library branches in Canaryville and the Richard J. Daley Library in Bridgeport, in my community, are terrific. The librarians are great. And I just want to thank you for your service and wish you all the best going forward and continue to bring great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Thompson.
Alderman Austen.
Mr. Valenti, I also want to just commend you on the work you've done, and just, if it hasn't been stated, the libraries play a critical role in how we are working with the youth of the city and dealing with the violence that we're dealing with. The libraries are a lifeline, and trying to continue to be innovative and reach people where they're at, youth specifically with U Media, is critical. So I think that collectively we got to work together to expand the hours. And as much as it's an education issue, it's a safety issue in communities. And I think it's also important to note that the libraries are one of the gateways to employment. You know, I have people that are lining up every day, you know, ready to get online to fill out job applications. So I think, you know, it goes beyond the what we typically think of as a library. But I commend you on your work and look forward to partnering in expanding the services. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Austen.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Chair Silverstein.
Chair, I'm over here.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just real quick, I want to say that the 50th Ward is the home to the Northtown branch, which is one of those libraries that has CHA housing above, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's a huge asset to our community, and I would like to encourage more discussions about that throughout the city. I also want to make a plug for the Sunday hours. I think that that would be also something wonderful. In my ward, we have a lot of Orthodox Jewish people who keep the Sabbath on Saturday, and so using the library on the weekend, they have no opportunity for that. And so if we would allow Sunday hours, then they would be able to go on Sundays to utilize the wonderful library that we have in the 50th Ward and throughout the city. So thank you. If you
Thank
would
you.
consider that, I would appreciate it.
I will bring that to our board. Thank you, Alderman Silverstein.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Silverstein. We have one public speaker, George Blakemore, for this item.
Good morning. My name is George Blakemore, and I have a title. I'm a concerned citizen. I'm in fundamental. All of you should read your agenda. It has Rule 47. Rule 45. You're implementing something illegal. This is not, one committee can't choose one rule and another one when it comes to public comment. And the library, I'm against this mix with public money, with CHA and the city. These are two different government entities. And that saga that's going on with that Obama library, it's a disgrace. I don't have to agree. It is a disgrace. So this intergovernment agreement between the federal government and the city, that's why we have different government entities. And you have the audacity to come in with a Rule 45. Y'all read y'all agenda, you people. Reading is fundamental. I'm supposed to be able to speak on each one of these items. And why would all of you have your committees at the same time? Why don't you have this committee at 5:30 or 6:30 where working people can come? The working people. So it's disgraceful. It's bad public policy. This mix that you have between CHA, it's not good. So you don't have to agree with me. You can disagree with me, but I'm entitled to my opinion. And the last thing with this library board, when y'all have your miscus and everything at Harold Washington Library, you put the street where it's located. Put the name, Harold Washington Library. You don't do that because you don't want to recognize the first black mayor of our great city. So there's a lot going on. They have all kind of parties and drinks down there, bar mitzvahs, and have a good time, and they charge. So good, we're getting revenue. But on these invitations, have the name Harold Washington Library Center. His name, not the address of the street. And it's an egregious act. I've been advocating for this for many years. Now you go back to your board and look at them holding their hand over here. Look, why don't he sit down? Do you have anybody else up here that want to speak? I embrace my uniqueness. You have the audacity to come in with some Rule 45. Each one of these people that's being reappointed, I have a
Thank
right.
you, Mr. Blakemore. Can I have a motion on item number 2 on the agenda? Moved by Alderman Austin. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. Mr. Valenti, we will be reporting this out at the next City Council meeting, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chairman Dowell, and thank you to the entire committee. Have a good day.
The third item on the agenda is a communication from the Honorable Lori E. Lightfoot, Mayor, reappointing Jody L. Block as a member of the Chicago Public Library Board for a term effective immediately and expiring on June 30th, 2022. Ms. Block is here today and will address the committee. Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. So I'll introduce myself. First, I want to say thank you to Chairman Dowell and to the members of the committee. My name is Jody Block, and I come before the committee seeking confirmation for my reappointment to the Library Board. A little bit about myself. I was the creator and owner of Children in Paradise, the largest children's-only bookstore in the Chicagoland area for 13 years. I was responsible for managing staff, selecting inventory, and overseeing day-to-day operations. I'm married with 2 kids. One is a senior at Tulane, the other a first year at Georgetown Law. I currently sit on the boards of Personal PAC, After School Matters, Chicago Children's Museum, and the Chicago Public Library Foundation. I've always been drawn to books, first as an editor, then a bookstore owner, and currently as a board member of the library. I like to see people learning. Primarily it's been through books, but over the last 9 years as a board member, I see the library as a leader in providing educational resources to the community, helping people apply for jobs, take citizenship classes, have 24/7 access to homework help, also allowing residents to access digital materials, participate in the Summer Learning Challenge, as well as media. I'd like to stay on the board to help ensure that Chicago Public Library remains a vital part of the community, allowing people in Chicago to enhance their education and have a safe place to go for experiential learning. Thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Block. Alderman Austin.
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Block, since your appointment before today, have you encouraged any other additional books to be housed in the libraries that you have went through that you haven't seen in any of our libraries?
Additional, what did you say, books?
Books.
I mean, I do feel like the library has a pretty great selection of books, both online and actually in the libraries themselves.
Okay, in the children's libraries, have you suggested any other additional materials for the children's libraries?
Well, they just redid the library, the children's library and the Harold Washington Library, Thomas Hughes, and I think that they were so thoughtful and they did such an excellent job in, presenting what they have. So
What about in the neighborhood library, children's libraries?
well, in my neighborhood library in Merlot,
No, not your neighborhood. Out of your neighborhood.
I have not suggested other books or
Have you
materials.
visited other neighborhood libraries?
Yes.
Okay, so in those libraries, did you ascertain in the children's libraries, were they adequate or adequately stocked?
I felt like they did, a very good job. I always check out the children's libraries anytime I visit another branch when we have meetings in our other branches. And I also feel like the children's librarians are very, well-versed in what is available and what is, coming up that they need to have in their libraries.
The reason why I'm asking this question is because it's sitting in home with my own grandchildren and watching television and so forth. The one thing that does come on, which I think is very impactful to some children, and that's ABC Mouse. I would like to see that introduced into our children's libraries, where there you can find some children that are not quite interested in the computers, but ABC Mouse has been one of those instruments that have been able to make the children or get them interested in internet.
I mean, I think that's a good idea, and that's something I would, present to the board in future meetings.
I wonder, is it a cost to it? So it's a cost to us, the public. So I wonder, would it be a big strain for the library for the cost to them on getting ABC Mouse?
Alderman Austin, that might not be a question she can answer, maybe.
I know. I just want her to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, and there are grants coming in, and I'm on the, the foundation board, and that's something that I would also discuss with them as, something to raise money for.
Well, would you look
Privately.
into that for me? All right, then. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I want to
Alderman
make you the
Austin.
president, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Austin. Ms. Block, could you explain to the new colleagues here the difference between the Chicago Public Library Foundation and the library board which you're being appointed to?
Well, the foundation is the sort of money-raising arm of the library. And, you know, we, as a library board member and visiting libraries throughout the city and talking with the, you know, the librarians and also the patrons, trying to figure out what their needs and wants are, for me to be a liaison, then to communicate that information to the foundation, because the needs of the branch then get communicated to the planning teams that help fund many of the programs that the libraries need or want.
Thank you. Alderman Spizzato, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Black, thank you for stepping up again. I really appreciate it. I know it's kind of, sometimes things could be demanding to take your own time. I know the pay isn't the greatest for this job, but we really, really appreciate you stepping up. So just want to say thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Alderman Lopez?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Ms. Block. You heard my comments earlier to Mr. Valenti, so I just want to reiterate the importance of making sure that our board is well aware of the impact that co-locations are having, and urge you as well, so I could say that I've said it to both of you, to look at whether or not our children are in fact benefiting from this arrangement.
Yes, thank you. I will look into that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Tunney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Block, thank you for your service. I know that you're a resident in the Lakeview neighborhood, and I just wanted to make sure you put your 2 eyes and sense and progress on the renovation of the Murillo Library, because it's pretty frustrating for lack of activity there. I know there's a lot of process with PBC, but you know, it's scheduled to be open in February of next year, and I hope you and I can and that ribbon in February and not in April or May, because it's been out for a long time. And we didn't have a temporary location in the interim. So I wanted to thank you in advance for your help. I know the commissioner's here, and I know we're having meetings generally once a month until we get it open. I do have a question, though. Have you at all been to the Gerber Hart Library?
To which one?
Gerber Hart Library. It's not part of the system, but it is the LGBTQ library. And it suggests they have very limited hours, but it gets me to the point about you're talking about educational books and just in general how the LGBT community is viewed in terms of the history, whether it's in the classroom or in books and such, because this is certainly a very much needed historical perspective that hasn't been in the libraries. And I know we've done a pretty good job to date, but on behalf of the LGBT community, I would hope our public libraries continue to do a great job representing the history of LGBTQ. Thank you.
I do too.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Tunney. Alderman Moore?
Chairman, I just want to know, is there any, to your knowledge, any working relationship or partnership between the Chicago Public Library as a whole and the libraries within CPS, or any CPS library relationships there? And especially in terms of when we talk about even, you know, new books, just any working relationship at all, and if so, what is it, if there is any?
What's our relationship with the CPS?
Yes. Or partnership, or?
Well, yeah, we do have like teachers in the library, and I think those come from the neighborhood schools. So that's one really positive relationship that
When
we
you
have.
say you have teachers in the library, like in the...
For homework help.
Okay. So you have teachers that come to the main libraries to help people with homework? Okay.
Yes.
And what about any other interaction in terms of books, recommendations, making sure that CPS is connected with the overall library outside of the school? Is there any partnership or anything
Right,
like that that's happening?
I think that's a good point and a good, another good thing to bring up at the next board meeting to look into.
Yeah, I think we should do that and form a stronger partnership between CPS librarians and because you'll be surprised, even our students are like, I didn't know about this library, or I didn't know that this existed at the library. And we have to make sure that connection and communication and partnership is there between the Chicago Public Library and the librarians within CPS.
Right, I agree.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. We have one person sign up for public speaking, George Blakemore. Seeing that he's not here, can I have a motion on item number 3? Moved by Alderman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All those in the opinion of the chair, as the ayes have it, and Ms. Block, we will report this out to the full city council at the next city council meeting. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your time.
The fourth item on the agenda is from the Office of Budget and Management. It's an ordinance concerning an amendment to the annual appropriation ordinance year 2019 within Fund Number 925 for the Department of Housing and other departments. Do I have a motion to accept this substitute ordinance? Moved by Alderman Rosa. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? The substitute ordinance will be explained by Deputy Budget Director Latoya Vaughn from the Office of Budget and Management. We also have representatives from the various departments here to answer any specific questions. Ms. Vaughn?
Good morning, Chairman Dowell and the members of this committee. My name is Latoya Vaughn. I'm Deputy Budget Director with the Office of Budget and Management. I'm here to present the 925 grant amendments as well as a brief overview of the programs. The department representatives are in attendance in case there are additional details, programmatic details that are needed. This 925 amendment request is requesting the authority to spend $21,841,000 from various federal and state agencies. The Department of Housing is requesting $2,184,000 in additional state funds from the Illinois Housing and Development Authority for the Abandoned Residential Property Municipality Program. These funds will be used to support demolition, reimbursements, property preservation, cleanup, removal of blight, and similar activities that will also provide work experience for ex-offenders and at-risk residents residing in those communities struggling with high violent crime rates. The Department of Public Health is requesting new and carryover funds in the amount of $205,000 from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for the Adult Viral Hepatitis Program. These funds will be used to collaborate with community partners to continue efforts in expanding the hepatitis C virus testing and diagnosis among populations experiencing hepatitis C virus-related disparities. The Department of Public Health is requesting new federal grant funds in the amount of $3,302,000 from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for the Overdose Data to Action Program. These funds will be used to improve existing prevention and response efforts, increasing linkages to evidence-based treatment, and promote awareness of best practices among healthcare providers and the public. The strategies will enhance surveillance and prevention efforts with a focus on African American communities with hardship in the city. The Department of Public Health is requesting additional federal pass-through grant funds in the amount of $228,000 from the U.S. Department of Agriculture through the Illinois Board of Education for the summer food program. The funds will be used to conduct sanitation inspections of the summer food service programs and children and adult care food programs to provide food service preparation in addition to sanitation inspections during times of food preparation of food service management companies required by the Illinois State Board of Education. The Department of Family and Support Services is requesting additional state pass-through funds in the amount of $8,400,000 from the Illinois Board of Education through the Chicago Public Schools for the Early Childhood Block Grant Program. The Early Childhood Block Grant Program is comprised of two programs: the Preschool for All, which serves children ages 3 to 5 years of age, and the Prevention Initiative, which serves pregnant moms, infants, toddlers ages birth to 3 years of age. Funds will be used to support management and administration of community-based programming associated with the Early Childhood Block Grant Program. This includes the Prevention Initiative, which is the Birth to 3 programs, in the amount of $4,625,000. Preschool for All, which is a 3 to 5 year program, and in the amount of $2,775,000, and also to provide scholarships in the amount of $1 million. These funds are to cover the last 4 months of services for these programs. The Department of Family and Support Services is also requesting an increase in the amount of $6,613,000. These are additional federal grant funds from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to support the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant Program. These funds provide low-income families early childhood services and resources for young children. The funds will be used to support a full day and a full year of high-quality child care services meeting Early Head Start program performance standards and providing comprehensive support for enrolling infants and toddlers and their families. A full day for that service means a 10-hour day. These services are also to provide the last 4 months of services for those agencies. The Chicago Police Department is requesting new federal pass-through funds from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services through the Cook County Health and Hospital System in the amount of $65,000 to support the Chicago Southside Early Diversion Program. These funds will be used to divert and prevent people with serious mental illnesses or co-occurring disorders, which include substance use disorder, who have experienced or are at high risk of experiencing mental health crisis from detention, connecting them to community-based behavioral health treatment and other services. The program will be active in the Chicago Police Department Districts 4, 5, 6, 7, and 22, as well as other areas within the South Side of Chicago. The Chicago Police Department is requesting new state funds in the amount of $804,000 from the Office of the Secretary of State to support the Illinois Motor Vehicle Theft Prevention Program. These funds will be used to combat motor vehicle thefts through a comprehensive and integrated motor vehicle theft prevention and recovery program, as disproportionately high percentages of the state's motor vehicle thefts originate in Chicago. The program also makes use of a public awareness campaign and promotes prevention as a tool to combat motor vehicle thefts. These funds will be used to support approximately 5,400 hours of investigative overtime for the Chicago Major Auto Theft Investigations Unit, as well as salary and fringes for a new crime intelligence analyst, as well as funds to support investigative equipment, including vehicles, tablets, computers, radios, and fixed license plates readers. The Chicago Public Library is requesting new state funds in the amount of $40,000 to support the Project Next Generation. These are funds originating from the Office of the Secretary of State. These funds will be used to build on teen audio recording and performance art programs at the CPL branch locations by strengthening and providing creative opportunities and skill development pathways for teen patrons. This includes visiting mentors for songwriters, audio engineers, and performance experts to provide staff training and direct teen instruction. Each mentor is paid a stipend of $10,000, and this program is $40,000. That concludes the grant amendments totaling $21,841,000.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. I'm going to get you to slow down at some point at the next meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman Haddon.
Thank you, Chair. Wondering, I know we've got representatives from the different departments here, and I have some questions around the DFSS.
Excuse me?
I have some questions about the allocations for Department of Family and Support Services.
Ask your questions,
Okay.
and we have representatives from the department here.
Fantastic. So I have been meeting over the last couple of months with several agencies who had applied for and had previously been awarded grants for the early childhood education programs, both for ages 0 through 3 and ages 3 through 5. I know there were some changes in the application system, a lot of technical issues. I have a 30-year agency, Eyes on the Future, and a 50-year-old agency, Howard Area Community Center, that both are NACE accredited and have gold standards. A fantastic reputation, and had previously received significant funding to serve low-income children and families in the Rogers Park neighborhood in the far north side there. And I know Eyes on the Future had technical issues applying for this program, actually received notification that their application was accepted. Turned out it wasn't. They were ineligible then for the first round of funding. Howard Area Community Center had technical challenges as well. I know this was experienced across the city. And we're at a point where I believe I've seen 13 agencies that had previously been funded, many of them also NACE accredited gold standard organizations, and mapped out they're predominantly in low-income Black and brown communities across our city that have been defunded. So I'm looking at the dollar amounts. I've been doing reading. I've been hearing from the commissioner. I know you guys have been sending out a lot of communications, but I have serious concerns and a lot of questions about the criteria for this funding. We haven't seen what that evaluation criteria was. I've seen a list of the current agencies that have been funded, but would like to see a list of the agencies that had been previously funded that have been either defunded or had a significant drop. For instance, Eyes on the Future did not receive $1.1 million. Howard Area Community Center, instead of receiving $1.2 million, received $330,000. These agencies might close and might not be able to serve families. I know that some of the documents have listed, I believe there are an increase you guys have listed in about 1,600 early education learning slots. I would like to see a breakdown of that by age and across the city. So what does that look like in the 0 through 3 age range? What does that look like in the 3 to 5? I would also like to see a map of funds distributed across the city for this cycle versus the previous cycle of funding. It's looking like on the surface that we're going to have a severe disparity in low-income Black and brown children that are going to be serviced by these programs and their families. It's also looking like with the funding cycle change, this is highly disruptive to families. These changes go into effect in December. These organizations are being coached, basically. I know that some of my organizations, right, you guys have partnered with another nonprofit organization to help transition. And also, these are infrastructures that have been built largely by Black women across our community, serving families in low-income communities across our city. And basically, they feel like they're being told, well, you didn't make the cut. We can't tell you why. We've got a new plan on how we're rolling out early childhood education through CPS. And now we want you to take everything in the infrastructure that you've built in our communities, and we want you to hand that over to somebody else. This is not okay. So a lot of questions about this. And then, you know, are these funding allocations, these additional pass-through funds, is this funding the second round that you guys opened up, or is this for the first and second round?
So I can speak in general to the contracting process, and then I'll ask for the departments to speak to how they evaluate certain agencies. So in October of 2017, the city launched the new e-procurement system, which is an online purchasing process or system that allows the delegate agencies and other vendors to submit proposals through an online system. We've provided training to delegate agencies since 2017 on that application. I know that the Department of Family and Support Services, they do evaluate each one of the agencies. This particular round of funding is the existing round. It's not a second round, so this one expires November 30th, and the new round, as you mentioned, starts December 1st. The agencies, we released 2 separate RFPs for different delegate agencies to respond to. I know DFSS did a vigorous evaluation process in which they can speak to, but this round is for the additional 4 months of services for the existing agencies. So I'll piggyback to the Department of Family and Support Services to speak to your other concerns.
My name is Tiffany Junkins, and I'm one of the managers for Children's Services Division for the Department of Family and Support Services. I understand you have a lot of questions, and I want to be able to answer some of them. I think probably we're going to have to meet afterwards so that we can have more conversations around this. But we released the request for proposal on April the 2nd, and it closed promptly at noon on May the 15th, 2019. There were a handful of agencies who did let us know immediately that they had what they thought to be maybe a glitch in the system because they were not able to successfully submit their RFP proposals. We did work with the Office of Budget and Management very closely, who worked with the vendor to make sure that if there were some technical glitches, we wanted to know about it because we wanted to work with the attorneys to be able to make sure if that was the case, we wanted to be fair in this process. The information we were provided supported the fact that there was no glitches in the system. We had over 250 applications submitted successfully, and unfortunately, there were a handful that did not make it. The two agencies that you mentioned directly, they were two agencies that did not get their submissions in on time, and it is unfortunate. We are working with agencies who were defunded, and we're having meetings with them. We started those meetings on August the 19th, and we're continuing to have those conversations because these agencies will still be funded through us through November the 30th. And we brought our partners to the table from Illinois Action for Children to be able to talk about their business model and their current operations and how we can keep them sustainable for their programming for children and families in their various communities. But it was a competitive process. This particular the grants that we have, it hadn't been competed since 2012. So it's been over 7 years since this funding has been redistributed across the communities. We understand that it has caused, a lot of concern across the city of Chicago. We, in an effort to make sure that our footprint was across the city, and with the additional funding that we received from the state, as well as the redistribution of the Head Start money that came back from Chicago Public Schools, we were able to do a couple of things. We were able to increase the cost per child, to increase quality standards throughout the city, and we were able to put more slots in our community-based programs. I understand that people are upset and frustrated with not being able to make it through that competitive process. We understand that, and so we're having conversations with agencies directly.
I appreciate the comments. One point of information. One of those agencies received confirmation that their application was submitted, and I know that they're continuing to troubleshoot with you guys. And so I hear that, and you say it's a handful, and I know in comparison to the total number of applications that's true. But I want to bring it back to my point of questions. I know you might not have this information readily available. I know I have a meeting with the commissioner on Wednesday, and I would like answers to these questions by that time. So again, it's looking at that total number of slots, so 1,600 more slots. What does that breakdown look like? That does look like, I feel like, I don't know if this is a qualifying statement or not, that the slot increases in CBOs. That makes me wonder, what's the total number, what's the delta on slots that we had previously for all, like through CBOs and other partners, and through CPS. So I'm going to be looking at, did we lose slots for our kids? And I want to see that mapped out on the funding distribution, because looking at, I know that not as much money came in, and plus this year you guys were able to make increases in some of the costs, and that's a big deal. That's something that was needed. And also it seems from the way this has been rolled out and implemented that the full consequences of how this was going to impact neighborhoods, small organizations, long-term, highly qualified organizations, and more importantly, low-income Black and brown children and families across the city of Chicago was not fully considered and thought through. This is being very disruptive, and it's a very short time frame. for any kind of transition to take place, even if you feel like this was a justified process. So I'll be looking for those evaluation criteria, and I would like to see the criteria as well from the organizations that were defunded, those 13 large agencies across the city. And thank you.
And thank you, Alderman. And we will have that information for you when you meet with the commissioner. I don't think anything that you requested is unreasonable, so we would absolutely be able to give that. And there wasn't, just a correction, there wasn't 13 agencies that were defunded. It was actually 12.
All right, we have
Thank
a
you.
point of information from Alderman Hairston and then Alderman Austin, followed by Alderman Burnett. Point of information.
Yes, I think that
I have everyone who's raised their hand. I have you on the list here.
I think the information that Alderman Haddon requested is of interest to everyone in the city council and not just for private. So
I agree.
Madam Chair, whatever your wish is to actually bring DFS down here to answer those questions and provide us with that information.
Right, I agree, Alderman Hairston. I wanted to hear the, there's a lot of people that want to speak, so I want to hear what the comments are before I would actually suggest the plan forward. Alderman Austin?
Thank you, Madam President. I got questions, I think, for a little bit of everybody. But to start off, in the Department of Housing, is there a specific area that you're focusing on with these funds, Commissioner Simpkins?
Good morning, Alderman, Madam Chair. Anthony Simpkins from the Department of Housing. The Abandoned Residential Property Municipal Relief Fund is a state fund that is purpose for making grants to municipalities and counties to assist with the costs incurred for the demolition of abandoned residential properties primarily. Properties of 6 units or less, and also for the securing and maintaining of such properties. So the funds will be used to reimburse for the demolition by the Department of Buildings of properties, and a portion of the money will be used to fund the cleaning of lots and securing of vacant properties as well.
This is I know the second or third time that we've had a grant such as this, that it's always for the multi-unit buildings, but never really any focus on the single-family units. When would funds or grants be specifically for that? Because when I go to the commissioner and there's not enough money for those that do need to be demolished in 34, then there's not enough money, but it's always constant money for multi-unit buildings.
Well, these grant funds are specifically to reimburse the demolition or the property preservation of properties of 6 units or less. So this is single families up to 6 units.
Not quite true, but anyway, thank you, Commissioner. I have other questions too, Madam Chairman. That's in public health. When and the one where I think it's on page 3, Ms. Thomas? That's who's supposed to be speaking. Well, whomever is here to speak.
It's Ms.
In
Thomas,
regards
Diana
to,
Thomas.
they use the word surveillance. I'd like to know, what are they surveilling?
I'm sorry, Alderman.
The wording that the verbiage that you have here, you said the strategies will enhance surveillance and prevention. What are you surveilling?
Which grant is this for? We had 3 pending page.
Yeah, that's
3.
on page 3.
This is for the overdose data to action
Right.
grant.
I'm going to allow our, thank you, Deputy Commissioner Matthew Richards to respond.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Matt Richards. I'm the Deputy Commissioner
Stand
for
up. I
Behavioral
can't
Health.
see you back there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can stand up.
Okay.
Surveillance is just data monitoring. It just means it's the different data sources that we utilize to do program planning. So with overdose reversal, we use data on lethal and non-lethal overdose. So that would be medical examiner data, it would be EMS run data, and we look at those data sources to see where do we need to prioritize additional interventions and programming by community area.
Are these for patrons that come to your clinics or how do you acquire the information?
So we have an annual meeting with the medical examiner's office, and we look at per year the number of lethal overdoses that we have, and we map those by community area. And you'll see that in our annual opioid surveillance report. You can look at that data. Another thing that we do is we will look at non-lethal overdose data by community area, and you can also see where the community areas where we had the greatest number of EMS runs. That data is from Chicago Fire Department.
All right, maybe you can answer these other questions too in regards to, it's still in public health.
Sure.
May I go on, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
continue.
The other one is on page 2, where you have caring ambassadors. There is no focus that I see in 3 wards that are on the far south side, 34, 21, and 9. There are no partners that you've stated. And 10, I'm sorry. We would like to, well, I, along with Alderman Garza, would like to know where are the partners for the ambassadors in those areas?
Hi, Ayanna Thomas, Supervisor, Grants Administration. I would have to talk to our Deputy Commissioner who's in charge of communicable disease to figure out why those wards aren't being serviced by our community partners. Those are the existing ones, so I'm not sure if there's a pending RFP for those wards, but we can provide that information.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because I do have one that used to provide, which would be Southside Health. But I see that it's not focused in being in 34 or servicing all 3 of those areas. So I need to know who would be our ambassador for those, especially in those wards.
Yes.
All right then. Thank you. I think I got one more question, Madam Chair. I do. And that, again, is in the police department. And for the Southside Early Diversion Program, it says funds will be used to divert and prevent people with serious mental illnesses. I need somebody to explain that one to me. How are we diverting them?
Sergeant Moriarty?
Sergeant Moriarty, please come forward and answer.
Because have they ascertained that these are mental health patients, individuals, or what? Because if I make no mistake, my districts are in there, 5 and 22. So I'd like to know how are they being diverted?
What we're trying to establish as far as the Southside Community Triage Center, which is located at 200 East 115th Street, is basically a designated facility for those districts to take folks that might not meet the criteria for a voluntary admission. So let's say I need help, I need support, I need medication. I know I have a problem. The police show up, it might be an initial 911 call, it could be a check to well-being, it could be a disturbance with a crisis. From that location, we give that opportunity to say, look, you can go to the Community Triage Center. You can stay in the community and get the support that you need to help you. If it's involuntary, where we're taking them against their will, we cannot use that facility as far as right now. Okay. But that's what we're trying to do as far as to educate, and as far as us and the CIT side, which is an acronym for Crisis Intervention Training. We want to let the officers in those districts know to utilize this resource with the Roseland Community Triage Center.
Well, could I get a list of the 2 districts that I have, 5 and 22, of who those officers are, so that we can recommend those that we believe? And the reason why I'm asking that is because we have a young man out in the far south side. His travel is South Halsted. I know that this young man is disturbed. It has been told that somebody gave him illegal drugs. So he just walks the street, never mind the traffic, and he's been hit several times. So I know that the young man is disturbed, but you can't get him to go anywhere. And then when they try to arrest him, it's just, total chaos. But so, how do I recommend that the officer either come in surveillance and see how this young man operate, or how he walk up and down the street. He raids the boxes that have clothes in it, strolled them everywhere. I know this child needs some help. He's not a boy anymore. He's a grown man. But I know he needs help.
And that's why it's so imperative that we utilize the Community Resource Center so we can get him somewhere that he's geographically close to where he walks or where he's at. And that's where it's so important versus putting him constantly at Roseland or Jackson Park, where we're just using an involuntary petition, and that's what the officers would use at that time, when once he becomes a harm to self or others, and then we just take him in for the 3-day psych evaluation.
Well, would you get those officers for me in those two districts?
I can give you a list of all the officers that are
All
CIT
right.
trained in 5 and 22.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
I'm gonna make you the president before the day's over with,
Thank
Madam
you,
Chairman.
Alderman Austin. Alderman Burnett?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Just wanted to just put my 2 cents in being concerned about the early childhood organizations. In particular, in my ward, this is just one that I know of, is Marillac House, right? That has a early childhood facility for low-income folks. You know, we have, and I know the Board of Education may be doing some things, and the challenge with that is some of these organizations are more convenient for these low-income families to take their children to than the school is, right? Because it's right next door, it's right next to them, and it's convenient for them. You know, a lot of these parents have grown up through the same organization, and they feel it, and so I'm concerned about that. This is a large organization that's it's been in place for many years. I have 3 generations that have been going through that organization, and now they're getting defunded. Our goal is to always help people without hurting someone else. We shouldn't be in a position, because we're helping the Board of Education to have early childhood education, that is hurting other organizations and putting them out of business. So we need to figure out a way of balancing that out. I understand. I do understand if people choose to take their kids to the school, right? And in some instances, they probably want their kids to go to the school because it's an easy pipeline for them to be in a good school, right? We understand that. So it should be in a situation where if you have less kids, you get less funding, but not that you get less funding because we want to take your kids. You know what I'm saying? So y'all need to revise this thing if this is the case. I'm not sure if this is totally about the case, because no one from your department has spoken to me. And this may just be one of the organizations that I know of in my ward that have the challenge, because they're the only one that have spoken to me thus far. There may be others, you know, and a lot of times these organizations tell us at the last minute, right? Right when they lose everything. And so we need to know ahead of time from you guys what we're going to be dealing with, right? Because at the end of the day, those parents, like we're pushing all of these folks to get these jobs, to go to work. If their kids can't go to preschool, some of these parents will have to quit their job, right? And that's hurting people to help somebody else. And we have to make sure that we don't hurt people in the process of this. This is all about helping people. And we have to make sure that this thing is done right and is done fair, and that we don't have anybody, you know, losing their livelihood in the process because of it. And this is a serious situation for some of the folks in our ward, and they're going to be coming to us. So we got to figure out a way of making this work. And I think it's only fair for you all to let us know if any organization in our ward did not, you know, fill out the application right, or whatever the case may be, so we can help them, especially if they've been around for more than 10 years. You know, I mean, that should be a light bulb that we got to get on this and let everybody know about this, because we know there's going to be repercussions behind it, or people are going to be concerned, and they're going to go to the elected officials, whether it's the alderman, the state rep, or whatever the case may be. They're going to come to us. So y'all should get ahead of this instead of getting in back of it, okay?
Absolutely. And we will give you guys the list of the defunded agencies and talk about the transition process.
Alderman Sawyer. Thank you, Alderman Burnett. Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to express the concerns that were raised by Alderman Haddon earlier as it relates to Department of Family and Support Services. I did have an opportunity to meet with Commissioner Morrison Butler with a representative of Little Angels Academy, who I believe are in the audience today. It's troubling, and I think maybe something that could at least clarify some things if a representative can talk about the scoring system that was used. I think that was an area of concern. It was an independent scoring system. Some people who I know, for example, Little Angels, who has a wonderful program, who have high achievers leaving out of their program into kindergarten, into the city, but yet apparently did not score high enough to be considered for this round of grant funding. And I think all of us could benefit from some clarification about how the applicants were scored, because it was an independent system, and I don't know if this was the first time it's being done or not. I'm not aware, but I think we as a body should understand that and maybe dive into that a little further. And I don't know if the representative here can talk to that, at least briefly, and because I know it was kind of complex, but if you can just give us a little education about that.
I'm Tiffany Junkins from the Department of Family and Support Services, Children's Services Division, one of the managers. In terms of the application and the strength of each proposal, that was definitely something that we took into consideration, but more so than that, there were other factors that were taken into consideration as to how we ranked organizations and were able to provide funding. Those had to do with the community area. And we took a look across the city of Chicago to make sure that we had a footprint where there was need. And so the density levels of each community, how many children were in communities to be served, whether there was oversaturation or undersaturation, we took those factors into consideration as well. So the strength of the proposal was definitely considered, but it wasn't one of the main factors, although it was, a part of the prioritization for the funding that was being distributed across the city.
And I guess that, I don't think that answered the question, but I think we're looking probably more to a deeper dive into.
Right, and what I wanted to do, Alderman Sawyer, was to go through the hearing to hear how many of us have these concerns, because I think it's important for all of us to sit down with the commissioner, not on a one-off.
I don't want to belabor, but just add me to one of those that are concerned.
I put your name down.
Thank
you, Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman.
The next speaker will be Alderman Garza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to be added to that list. As I'm looking at this list of people who got funding, I see two, well, El Valor, but they have numerous agencies throughout the city, as well as Metropolitan Family Services. I don't see one name in the 10th Ward here, not one. Not one name. So I would like this piece of paper that you guys gave us, I'd like, through the chair, if you can please let us know who was defunded and what agencies, what ward these agencies are in. Because I don't see anybody in my ward. So I'd like to know that. And secondly, these early childhood programs are going to be focusing on 3-year-olds, 3 and 4. What's
0 to 3 and 3 to 5.
0, 3, and 3 to 5. Are there going to be certified teachers in these programs?
I'm certain there will be. I can let
You
the
want to
department
speak to
speak to
that?
it, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
So in our 3 to 5 programs, the requirement is a Pell, the professional education license, if they're going to be receiving preschool for all funding. However, for other funding such as Head Start, which also serves 3 to 5, that's not a requirement to have a Pell. Okay, but if you're receiving the preschool,
what does a Pell stand for? Excuse me.
If you are receiving funding for our Preschool for All program, which is the funding that we get from CPS by way of ISB, if they're receiving that funding, it's the Pell. The Pell is what the teacher has to have, the professional's educator license. Okay, so they have a bachelor's degree and some additional coursework to get them a Pell.
So are they a certified teacher?
Yeah, they have yes, they have the license
to teach.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I want people to understand is when the last administration started saying preschool for all, they charged people to go to preschool. So I had families that were paying over $400 a month for 2 hours of preschool every single day. Where when it was free, we had waiting lists all across the city. Now we're taking kids out of CPS and they're being put into some of these agencies, which to me means we're privatizing public education, which I don't think is right. But there are some of these agencies that provide great alternatives. And I agree with Alderman Sawyer. I don't understand how they were chosen. So I'd like to just, be part of that conversation about who was defunded and what ward these agencies are in.
Thank you, Alderman
Good
Garza.
morning. Just to clarify, good morning, Jacqueline Tiama Massey, Director of Grants. The list that's before you is of the existing agencies. So I don't want you to get confused. That's not the list of the agencies that went through the RFP, as the Deputy Budget Director explained earlier.
Okay,
So that you understand.
I'm sorry, I missed that one. Are we talking about the RFP that went out for senior satellite centers? Is that included in this?
No.
Okay.
This list that you have is for existing agencies that are funded through the current grant program that expires November 30th. So we can get you a list of those and get the wards to which agencies are located. And then for the new list of agencies that start December 1st, we can also provide that list and provide it by ward and also by a map.
Thanks.
Chairperson Dow, this is Tiffany Junkins. I just wanted to add.
Excuse me. Point of information.
If
Alderman
we can
Burnett.
if we can have that with addresses also, because some of these agencies work across wards, right? They have several facilities in different wards, and it may be the address in one ward and not the address in another ward.
So we'll get you corporate locations and site locations.
Okay, so like Chicago Commons, the Archdiocese, folks like that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Tiama Massey, you wanted to add something?
This is Tiffany Junkins, and so actually, Alderman Burnett actually just mentioned it already, which is the list that you're looking at. It has the delegate agency, and so there's a breakdown right a little further to get to each site then that was funded. And so we can be prepared also to give you a list of each site that would be funded, which gives you more detail, and you can see which ward then that would come into as well. Okay, because that's just agency information, right? High level.
Thank you, Ms. Junkins. Alderman Taylor.
So I will not repeat what my coworker said, but I do agree that there needs to be a real conversation around how you all decided. I got from two of the agencies that there was a question about how will you send young people to CPS. And I don't think that's a fair question, but I would want to see what the RFP look like. Second, we're talking about funding universal pre-K. Did you all do a needs assessment for that? Because my concern is, if you're at Chicago Public Schools, school usually in at 3:45. What happens to all of these young people who are used to being in these centers that keep them to 6 and 7 o'clock? So we're not thinking about working families. And it does not seem like, I don't know if people understand that when young people are in Chicago Public Schools and pre-K, those numbers are not counted in CPS's budget, in that school budget. So those are two separate budgets, and the schools are not allowed to use that money. And so it doesn't make sense for us to move those students to CPS because that money does not help with the per pupil budget. So it does not give schools more money. What it does is take up an entire classroom, which makes schools under enrollment, which goes to the thing of your school is under enrolled and we're closing again. And so there should have been a conversation between the community, you all, and CPS before this decision was made, because it doesn't seem like you all did a needs assessment. Little Angels is a agency that is not in my ward, but it services two parts of my community that are usually disinvested in it. To see them defunded is really an issue for me, and us not have a real conversation around why.
Thank you, Alderman Taylor. Before we go to Alderman Smith, I also want to weigh in here with the Centers for New Horizons, which was one of the impacted organizations that we received phone calls for. And so this would be an agency that I think should be also included in the discussion for this program.
Absolutely.
Point of information, Vice Chair Silverstein?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you include me in that list that you're
Yes,
keeping?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Michelle Smith?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I certainly want to be included on this list of very, very concerned child care providers about this. One question that I have is, who did the screening for this RFP? Who actually did the screening? Was it employees of the department who are familiar with these, or was it something outside?
Tiffany Junkins, Department of Family and Support Services, Children's Services Division. The evaluators were outside readers from local colleges and universities. Most of the readers that we had, they were not paid, they were volunteered. They were professionals within the education department of local universities and colleges.
So are they students, grad students, teachers?
Professors.
Professors?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to express my concern about that and the lack of on-the-ground knowledge of, bless their hearts, of course, teachers are very important. But I have some serious problems with that method of reviewing an RFP. And in particular, I'm very concerned and want to echo the concerns of both Alderman Taylor, Alderman Solomon, Alderman Burnett, in particular with regard to the fact that many of our local child care providers do much, much more to help both working and non-working families in terms of child care. And in particular, I'd like to express strong concern about the treatment of Marillac, St. Vincent de Paul Center, who have facilities in Alderman Burnett's ward and my ward, which service a 100% population of diverse individuals, individuals earning no more as a family than $40,000, and whose programs are among the best in the city. I just received a note from, I think we all just received a note from DFSS that tried to explain this as being advancing kindergarten readiness, providing citywide coverage, improving quality standards. And I am hard-pressed to understand why a program that is certified by one of the highest levels of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, that has a 93% kindergarten readiness, meets 93% early kindergarten readiness, that has certified teachers in their classrooms already, and has teacher-to-child ratios that are some of the lowest in the industry, including 1 to 3 for infants, and coordinates with our local public schools for after-school care, is somehow defunded. And so we are going to be, of course, meeting with your department, but I really want to understand why this agency got defunded.
I think that I probably will not be able to give you the level of detail in which you're looking for today, but I think that this definitely can go for further conversation. I want to go ahead and also add that each proposal that was received had a minimum of at least 2 reads. So it wasn't just weighted on an independent read. There were 2 reads done. And in the event that a score was over 20 points difference in those 2 reads, then it triggered a 3rd read. You know, I didn't sit back and read proposals and make those determinations. These were done by professionals in education and early childhood. I understand. I mean, this has really shaken a lot of people up. We have an RFP since 2007. It's been a long time since this money has been redistributed across the city of Chicago. I do want to say that we did put more money back into the different communities, and we've created opportunities for more slots. I know that's not going to be comforting for anybody who was defunded, but we are making a commitment to still working with those organizations and meeting with them to try and help them through, you know, any type of funding, any type of services or support that we can provide. So it's not a done deal, right? And these agencies are still funded through November the 30th, and we're still trying to explore what else can we do.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that the department is open to correcting some of the decisions that have been made in order to maintain the highest quality education for our children and to help them get ready for kindergarten. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Alderman Riley?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I also have a few more questions on page 5 about the early childhood block grant, mostly prompted by questions my colleagues have been asking. I haven't heard anything yet about the scholarship component of the funding increase I see here. $1 million slotted, that's a pretty round number. Could you please explain a little bit more detail, the scholarship component and who's eligible for that money and where it goes?
And Tiffany Junkins, Department of Family and Support Services, Children's Services Division. So we are receiving an additional $1 million from Chicago Public Schools to help support and provide scholarships for individuals who are enthusiastic and want to teach in our early childhood programs in our community-based organizations. So anybody who wants to teach and be a part of our early childhood family is eligible to apply for the scholarship. Currently, we've invested, I believe, $2 million last year in scholarship funds, and we've more than doubled that this year. So the additional $1 million will help to support those efforts to make sure that we increase our pipeline. It's very hard to get our early childhood educators, and so because there's a need there, we are putting more money there so that we can have more professionals who are licensed, who are educated to go ahead and get in front of our children.
That's great news. And and so this program is funding how many scholarships, would you say, annually? If you don't have that off the top of your head, certainly through the chair.
Yeah, Alderman, if I can get back with you, that way I can give you accurate data on how many we funded, how many we're currently funding, and how many we've actually funded last year as well. We can get that information.
In exchange for that public support for them pursuing, training and education in this field, are there some hooks then that once that person has received their degree, that they must work here with us for a certain amount of time, or is that optional? They can kind of pick and choose where they go once they graduate.
Yes, Alderman. So to use your terminology, is there a hook? The hook is that we do want them to stay with our Chicago early learning programs. And so if we're paying for you to get the degree, if we're paying for you to get the license, then we're asking for you to make a 3-year commitment with any of our Chicago early learning programs. And that's pretty vast, right? So they don't have to stick with the agency in which they're with. They can move around as long as they're a part of the family.
Okay, understood. And then I'm pretty familiar with Preschool for All. A bit less familiar with the Prevention Initiative, the prenatal to 3 years old program. I'm looking at how is this money, is it allocated per child, and is it at the same rate per child regardless of which provider they're served by? How does that money divvied out?
So yes, there is a per child rate, and it depends on the age of the child. So the item that you have in front of you today, just to use it as an example and not focus on what the RFP is stating, currently we have 2 different brackets, 3 different brackets of how we pay out our providers for our 0 to 3 Prevention Initiative program. So we have a rate for center-based that is 24 months and below, because it takes more money to care for infants and toddlers in the program. That rate is $10,000 a child. Okay, then we have a 2-year-old rate, so 2 to 3 before they get to age 3, then it's $8,000 a child. We also have Prevention Initiative in a home-based setting, and that's $4,400 a child.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I'm assuming, since you have so many providers competing for a limited source of funds, you've determine some sort of metrics for success, what distinguishes one program from another as far as the progress these kids are making in these programs. Is that a part of how you're evaluating these providers, or is it more based on the application they fill out, the geography I heard you mention, density of need? I understand those factors. But are there specific metrics that determine if one provider is doing a particularly good job and another is just doing okay? I would think with the much younger kids, that's more difficult to flesh out, but I'm curious to know if that's part of this.
Sure. So as a part of the request for proposal process, there was a lot of data that we requested from each applicant. And a part of that had to do with their classroom data. So we have certain instruments that we're using in early childhood to measure the success rate of the environment, the standard of quality being provided to each child. And so all of that information was requested through the request for proposal, and it was definitely taken into consideration as a part of the strength of the proposal.
Okay. And then my final question on this grant program is related to the city positions associated with the grant. 52.18. What's that 0.18? I assume these are hours billed to the program. How do you get 0.18 of an employee?
So we provided the full-time equivalent FTE to be able to support. So we have more staff than that, but in terms of the portion that's being allocated then to that particular grant, that's how we get the point.
Got it. And so when you show that 36.09 are filled and 16.09 are vacant, does that mean that you're simply not spending that 16.09 full-time equivalency portion? Is that what that means?
Well, yes, we're not spending it on those particular vacancies. So at some point, then we need to go ahead and modify our budget to go ahead and put the money, where other resources are needed.
Understood. And those currently, the 16.09, those are currently funded vacancies?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And then one last question on something completely different, and that's, I think, on page 2. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Adult Viral Hepatitis Program. So community partners include Caring Ambassadors, Erie Family Health Center, and the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois. And you show which wards are served. Board of Trustees, U of I. After you get past the 29th ward, you've got the 67th ward, the 68th ward, and the 69th ward. And I'd like to know where those are located. Oh, yeah. Oh, those are all parts of 42. Got it.
Just a typo.
Just a typo. I assume those are 47, 48, and 49. Is that?
Apologies.
Probably.
That's an error. That is an error.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you, Chairman. I would also like to be added to the list for the response for the information requested today.
We'll do Alderman Riley. Next we have Alderman Hairston, followed by Alderman Irvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're going to start from page 2. Community partners. Who can tell me who the Caring Ambassadors are? And what are their roles and responsibilities in terms of outreach?
That's information, Ayanna Thomas, Department of Public Health. That's information I don't have with me today, but I'm happy to forward that to you through the chair.
Well, so if I don't know who they are and they claim to be servicing my ward, I have to question what type of service, if any, they are providing.
That's understood.
Madam Chairman, are you familiar with Caring Ambassadors?
No, I'm not.
Oh, Alderman Sawyer just left. So that is that we do not know who they are and what they do. I'm not going to belabor the point that we all had talked about with the daycare providers, but I do want to say that it is important to know who your audience is. And so by getting some, even though they might be teachers that are not familiar with the various communities, then that is somebody that does not know their audience. And it might be good, sound good in policy and on paper, but in practice does not work. And I think we have that kind of a situation here. I would like to know who you said you could get the information from last year for the scholarships. And moving on to the police department.
We'll get that information to you, Alderman Hairston, through the chair.
Okay, thank you. The $65,000 grant for the Southside Early Diversion Program. Who is here to speak on that?
Sergeant Moriarty.
Yes, so I'd like to know why districts 2 and 3 were not included.
This was geographically based as far as from 115th in Indiana, and that the districts that we picked at that time was 4, 5, 6, 7, and 22, strictly based on availability and getting folks from where they live in the community to the facility. 2 being at 51st and Wentworth, that would be a bit of a hike. And what was the other district you were inquiring about?
Isn't 51st and Wentworth in the 2nd district?
Right, that would be a far, if there's a homeless population or they don't have the supports and it'd be public transportation, it was basically on miles.
So I'm not sure I'm following you. So it talked about the south side, right?
Correct.
And the 2nd district is on the south side, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And the 3rd district is on the south side. So help me to understand. So you were talking about 51st and Wentworth, which is on the south side, which is in District 2. So why was District 2 not included?
I think at the time when we were mapping this, Mercy Hospital was trying to be as far as offer a community resource at that time, and there was other positions in play. As far as every district has its own facility, as far as its own community outreach, as far as this being set up, it was total logistics. The closest districts from that facility were chosen.
From which facility?
115th in Indiana.
115th in Indiana. So 51st and Wentworth is... So the 3rd district is further south than 51st and Wentworth, and it's not included.
Correct.
So why was it not included? Am I missing something? Geographic distance. So does that mean that there's another grant that covers the 2nd and 3rd districts?
As far as what it's granted, I know available right now, I don't know that answer.
We can ask that question
Okay.
of the police department. I do not believe that the 2nd, 3rd, or the 1st district for that matter, which serves a portion of the south side, are included in this program. And I
Okay.
don't know if it's intended to roll out in those districts at another time, but we can ask the police department and get back to you, Alderman Hairston.
Okay, and so do they take these, do they transport people to the Cook County hospital system?
From the districts 4, 5, 6, 7, and 22, yes. The Community Triage Center is a resource that officers would transport individuals that are seeking voluntary admission. They would transport them to the facility.
And it is with county. They cannot be transported to any other facility.
No, they can be treated as far as it's an option. So let's say we're dealing with an individual in crisis in the 5th district. They have the choice of saying, look, we can send you to Roseland, we can send you to St. Bernard's, we can send you to Jackson Park. But if you're volunteering, you're saying, I need help, I need to go somewhere to get my meds, we can offer this community facility that's located at 115th in Indiana.
Okay. And is University of Chicago included in that?
No.
Okay, is that one of the options?
As far as within the police department, no, because they're not, as far as a district approved or accredited with us in any capacity.
Okay. And then the next is the motor vehicle theft prevention. How do you ensure that this is adequately or fairly administered?
Tomas? Malwin with the police department.
Good morning. My name is Tomas Maulawin. The program is citywide, and my understanding when we wrote the grant for this program was that the demand for intervention would be coming from the police district within where the incidents are happening. And so if the district requests the unit for support, then the unit will be available for that program.
And what happens if there are competing districts that want that? And the reason is because I think, if I recall correctly, there was a period of time last year, but there were a rash of car thefts on the north side, and then wonderful that the police department wrote this grant, but there have been rashes of thefts, car thefts on the south side, and nothing has been done. And so you can surely understand my concern about parity. The news coverage is, they steal 3 cars in a week, and, the news is all over it. We get 3 cars in a day and nothing. So, I'm a little concerned. I mean, $800,000 is a lot of money.
It is.
And so I'd like to know what is in place, what you all plan to do to ensure that every district that wants it can have an opportunity to have those resources?
One way that we can probably do that will be to ensure that district commanders are aware that the program is available. Make sure that the Bureau of Patrol speaks with all the districts where all the incidents are happening and make sure that the program is available. Any other suggestions will also be accepted.
Okay, thank you. And then last is, not for you, public library, actually. The project Next Generation. How were the sites determined?
Sure. The sites were determined by the branches that were renovated or built new construction through 2017, 18, and 19. So it's the 8 branches that are listed: Chicago Bee, Independence, Kelly, Northtown, Thurgood Marshall, West Loop, Whitney Young, and Woodson Regional. And so the funds are used to build on the teen audio recording and performance art programs at those branch locations through mentors.
Okay, I think it's a great program. It's unfortunate there's nothing available in South Shore or at South Shore Library, which is in desperate need of a new building, and I know that is in the 7th Ward, but it services my ward and is around the corner from my office, and so we would like to be able to take advantage of some of these programs and these opportunities, but we don't have the capacity. And so when you are thinking about putting in all of these programs and the brand new built libraries, you got to think about the ones that have been around that need to be updated.
Right. South Shore is under construction right now, and it should open probably in the late 1st or 2nd quarter of next year with these programs.
Is that a rehab?
It's
or
a rehab,
new building?
Yes. It's a rehab.
Okay, so you know physically that library is a little challenged. It's rather old.
Yes.
And so South Shore could surely use 2 branches.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner, for the record, would you just give your name?
Sure. I'm sorry. My name is Andrea Telly, Chicago Public Library.
Thank you very much. Alderman LaSpada. Oh, Alderman Irvin, I'm sorry. Followed by Alderman LaSpada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. Point number 1, as related to the overdose data to action, what I didn't see in here were communities like East and West Garfield Park, which in many cases has been pretty much ground zero for this opioid epidemic. If you were to walk down Pulaski right now, I guarantee you that you would find at least 15 addicts just roaming with backpacks. And this is something that is taking a very hard toll on the residents in West Garfield Park, and to not see any mention or any idea. I know we're working with some additional resources, but that community has been definitely hard hit with this opioid and fentanyl and whatever the newest craze is in that realm. And to not see them there, I just want to get some understanding of, is this community to be included as part of this $3.3 million grant allocation?
Thank you, Alderman. Matt Richards, Deputy Commissioner of Behavioral Health.
Give your name for the...
Matt Richards, Deputy Commissioner of Behavioral Health at the Health Department. Yes, so I think the data that's referenced in the description is from the 2017 opioid surveillance report. We're finishing the 2018 report right now, and so that data will be guiding the structure of the RFPs that we're about to release that'll start in the next fiscal year. And I can tell you, yes, East and West Garfield are priority areas. I mean, we know based on volume of EMS runs that the corridor on the west side is probably where about 90% of the high volume runs are. So we're aware of the challenge in those community areas.
Okay, thank you much. Next is relates this Department of Family Support Services. Now, there are two grants and there are two different pieces of information here. So one, and I just want some clarity here. One is regarding $5.1 million for 1,100 slots. Is that related to the item on page 5 or the item on page 6?
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman. You said 5 million?
Yeah, this one here, it says delegate agencies distribution of EHS CCP FY19. Because we got two different items related to 0 to 5, for lack of a better term.
Tiffany Junkins can explain the details and the breakout by PI and PFA.
Yeah, I believe that's the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership grant that you're inquiring about, the 1,100 children.
Yes, okay.
Yes. So that's $6.6 million that we're asking for, and that's to provide funding through November the 30th, 2019.
Okay, now is this also part of the group of providers that have been defunded?
So our Early Head Start Child Care Partnership is currently 19 agencies that receive that funding for those 1,100 children. Through the RFP process, we're actually increasing to 24. And as a part of the RFP process, the 0 to 3 funding, that particular fund was like the lowest cost per child. So we didn't get a lot of applicants who actually wanted that particular funding. And that was one of the shortfalls that we had that created an RFP2 that we actually put out there because we had a gap in people actually applying for it.
Okay, so let me ask this question. So there was I too received calls about technical glitches regarding the funding, and I don't know which round it was. So now is this and then I also understand that there was a second round of ask. Was that for the Early Childhood Block Grant or for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership?
So it was for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership. The funds for the Early Childhood Block Grant, which is Preschool for All and Prevention Initiative, it ran out in the first round of the RFP.
Okay, so so were both of these grant programs in the same round? Were the ask of the RFPs in the same round of funding for both the Early Head Start program and the Early Childhood Block Grant?
So Alderman, just to answer your question, the funding that was actually put through the RFP was all of the funding that we have, our Head Start complement, which includes Head Start. It includes Early Head Start and Early Head Start Child Care Partnerships. So all of the federal funds, those were able to be applied for. In addition to that, our state funding, which is also through the Early Childhood Block Grant. So Preschool for All and also Prevention Initiative were RFP'd as well.
So everything was done in one swoop, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you came back around and did a second round for what?
So we did a second round because very high level, what we realized was that we still had gaps. There was gaps, and we had an opportunity to talk to the attorney, even though we didn't quite know what that landscape was going to look like. What we wanted to do was make sure that we were preparing then for the gaps that we saw. There wasn't enough applicants that had applied for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership, and so we knew that we would still have slots on the table. Also with our Head Start program as well, there was gaps in that particular program. So instead of waiting until we kind of got to the bottom of how many gaps and which communities they were, the attorneys allowed us to go ahead and release then another RFP opening up all programs to go ahead and fill any potential gaps that we would see in community, and also to make sure that we're meeting our funder numbers.
All right, so we had the first round and then came back with a second round for essentially the same full box of funding.
That's right, Alderman.
Okay, so now we're at a situation where most individuals are not, those folks that had issues with the technical components of this were Were all of those issues resolved?
When working with the Office of Budget and Management, my understanding with talking with the vendor is that there was no technical glitches. I understand what people are saying, but the reality is the system is being used across the city of Chicago. It's the e-procurement system, and it times out. So if you don't get that application submitted by exactly 12 noon, at 12:01, you can't submit. And so my understanding was people calling a glitch wasn't actually a glitch. It was a late submission.
Okay, so round one, I heard that, technical glitch. Round two, do we have the same type of issues in
No,
round two?
No, Alderman. So round two, one of the things that we did, because we had heard that a handful of agencies did have problems, we increased our resources. We increased the information that we put out there in terms of guides, showing them exactly where to go step by step on how to navigate the e-procurement system. We conducted webinars. We did face-to-face interactions with our agencies. The Office of OBM helped us out as well with webinar information. So we put out more resources to make sure that this wouldn't be a problem again, but we still had one agency who still did not submit in a timely fashion.
Okay, so
Alderman, would you like to join the working group on this? Or
I would, but I'm just trying to just get some clarity, because we did get a lot of people that said that they couldn't access it, and it sounds like the department has cleaned up or helped people that couldn't access it get through. I wanted that issue to be off of the table. And if we're talking about one out of so many, I think the department would have adequately done its job to deal with that. Now, the second list that you have, it doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it, but it's approximately 7 pages of organizations. That's the $81 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's where the other concern rises from, that I think that Chairman Dowell is, yes, add us to that list about the concern of the allocation, location, and what this is doing to some of our local providers. And so I think we all do need to take a deeper dive on this, particularly with this 0 to 5 funding and what its impact will be across the communities, not just on the kids, but also we have to think about the economic impact that this has on some of our local businesses. And as Alderman Haddon talked about earlier, what this has done to, particularly community-based small businesses that particularly been hit hard in the Black and brown community. So that is a major item of concern for me as Alderman, and also as chairman of the Black Caucus. So we do hope to get a deeper dive on this whole process.
thank you, Alderman Irvin. Alderman Harris is not here. Alderman Lopez, followed by Alderman Austin.
Still good morning, Chairman. First, if I could also be included on the Department of Family and Support Services information list, I'd very much be anxious to see what their community footprints are. But I actually want to talk about housing. Switch it up. I'd like to talk about the grant and my concerns for this grant. I know Alderman Austin had mentioned her concerns about single-family demolitions and things of that nature, and I'm well aware that this is for units 6 and under. But it seems to be a recurring theme, and hopefully, I know Anthony Simpkins is here from DPD, but I'd also like to talk at some point perhaps with Streets and Sanitation and or the Department of Buildings, because they are the ones who generally address these issues with the demolitions as well as the securing of and cleaning of vacant lots, because it seems that it's an awful lot of missed opportunities when it comes to our ability to use localized contractors, whether by region or by zip code, to do the work that's in many of the communities, particularly on the south and west sides of Chicago. In my ward, last year, I think we did almost 100 demolitions at one point, trying to erase the glut of 700 plus vacant buildings. And to my knowledge, they're all basically done by one company, the McDonough Demolition or Construction Company. And last year, I introduced a resolution against this company because they were known in Detroit for backfilling into the properties that they were demolishing. And while I was assured that that was not the case here, you know, I know this is still an ongoing issue, and I know none of us want to find out that this is going on in our communities. And I think that as we see more money, millions of dollars coming to assist in the demolitions of these vacant properties in our neighborhoods, that we really have to do a better job finding local contractors, whether it's by zip code or creating grids or blocking together wards or neighborhoods. One, to create opportunities, real economic opportunities within our neighborhoods, but also so that we're not relying just on one singular contractor to do all of these demolitions. And I would leave it up to DPD if they'd care to comment on the thoughts and possibilities of doing greater outreach. I know this is something that I brought up with procurement, and if this is not either the time or the place for that conversation, I just want it on record that it
Thank you for putting it on the record, Alderman Lopez. I think that the building department is probably one place to focus that attention on.
Okay, well, just as I said, when I see more money going to the same area that I have very big concerns about, I'm not miss an opportunity to re-mention it. Also, with regards to the police department's early diversion program, one of my 3 police districts is the 7th district, which is included in this grant to assist individuals with mental health. And with CPD sitting behind me, I just want to say that I have concerns about their ability in implementing this kind of diversionary program, because I have seen and helped firsthand individuals who the police have refused to assist because of their mental illness. And that was in the 7th district. And I want to ensure that if whatever $65,000 extra buys us, that it gets us to a point where we don't have to always rely on local electeds, people on the block, or not-for-profits to help people with mental illness, because the police simply just do not want to handle the issue themselves. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Osterman, followed by Alderman Curtis.
A question regarding I don't know if I heard it correctly, to DFFS about the process of the RFPs and the, I guess, the first round reading. Was I to understand that the folks who read the RFPs were volunteer teachers and scored those, that then filled that up through the process to be the money to get allocated on?
We reached out to local colleges and universities in an effort to not expend grant funds on helping us to kind of get through this RFP process. We felt that we had enough colleges and universities that had experts right in the field of education and early childhood who can help us kind of get over that hump. So at every institution, we had coordinators, department heads, and things like that help us coordinate a team of professors who agreed to do the readings. We had provided them with supports in terms of training and things like that of what to look for. We didn't want people to kind of judge these RFPs and look at grammatics or anything like that, just the heart of the proposal itself. And so there was training that went behind that. Also, in terms of conflicts of interest, making sure that if that was an issue, that we would know that up front so that we can reassign things. So we tried to be very detailed in that process, but every RFP got at least 2 reads.
Okay. So I got a great deal of respect for your commissioner, and I think what troubles me, and I'm not doubting any of the effort that went into this, but this is the first RFP we've done on this since 2007. We have the child care program, and these programs in every community in the city are the cornerstone of education for working class families and low-income families who rely on this. I have a real question about accountability when we're farming this out to folks to do it on a volunteer basis, and not questioning what they decided, but as a city, to me, it's a priority issue. And how we use our resources and what weight we give to what we care about. And the fact that we're farming this out to volunteers to basically review small nonprofit education organizations in every community that Chicagoans go to provide quality education as a gateway to public school, I'm really troubled by that. And I'll be honest, I don't know that I knew that that was going to be the process 6 months or 7 months or 8 months ago. And had we known that at the time, I think we would have tried to say, look, it's worth us as a city to find money to hire an institution or a contractor or someone who could go through this in a professional level. Because here's the thing, we require those organizations to do everything for us and the most precious thing we have, which is our kids. And what we should have at least done is hire an organization or someone to basically take that task on. When we hire police officers, firemen, we go through a huge, lengthy, costly RFP process. I review your budget. I don't farm that out to a constituent to read it for me and tell me what looks good or doesn't look good. I do that. It's a priority for us. And the other thing is, which has been stated previously, many of these organizations have been around for 20, 30, 40 years doing this work. There's an institutional reliability in communities that the department should know about. Your department should know the effects of these organizations in the communities. All that taken together, I understand when we do RFP processes, it's important that we do that, but it's really important that we get it right. Even if we have to spend money on the front end to get it right and spend time to get it right, we need to do that. Because when we don't, we have organizations that get kneecapped and their funding's gone and they don't have a place to look to bail them out. And when they close, the people that are most affected are families who have to get up and go to work every day and their kids. And if we don't get those kids the right education from the get-go, we're in a troubled place. So that's a real issue. It's a fundamental issue, and I think that this committee has to take that up. And again, it's taken nothing away from the leadership of your department and the work that you do, but, you know, I'm troubled by the way we went about this, and I think that we have to look at moving forward how we help these organizations. Thank you.
Alderman.
No, there's not a need to respond to that. That was just wasn't a question.
Point of clarification.
No point of clarification right now. Alderman Curtis, not here. Alderman Moore, followed by Alderman Thompson. And that's the end of my list.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I get into my questioning first, Chairman, I want to commend you and your staff for putting together this great detailed information. Sometimes in the past when there were budget changes, it wasn't to this length, and I want to really say I commend you and your staff because this is very helpful. So continue to do that. For me, sometimes I'm sorry, you got to treat me like I'm a 2-year-old. So I have to go back because there's some questions that I've had in other meetings that I've been in. So when we initially, and some of this, please give as simple answers as possible. When we talk about preschool for all, when we initially stated this, I think there's some thoughts or is this impacting CPS in terms of when we say preschool for all, because you're hearing people talking about things coming away from CPS, then I'm hearing about us then reducing agencies and affecting businesses. So when we did preschool for all, is the money and the children, are they going to CPS or is it going to outside services when the mayor initially talked about an expanding preschool for all?
And Tiffany Junkins, Department of Family and Support Services. The money for Preschool for All that's in front of you, those are for community-based organizations. However, Chicago Public Schools does operate Preschool for All within their Chicago Public Schools across the city as well. And so I don't have necessarily that information, so it's operated in both.
Okay, so so did the preschool for all that CPS and through the mayor's expansion, is that taking away from the agencies?
So to answer your question, Universal Preschool, it was rolled out last year, so this is the second year of Universal Preschool for 4-year-olds. And the lion's share of 4-year-olds likely will be going to Chicago Public Schools. We've been talking to our community-based organizations about serving more 3s and under.
Okay, now, and then, thank you for, you answered my question, so on that one. So and I know people are watching and a lot of things were thrown out. So when we say preschool for all, early childhood block, early Head Start program, early Head Start partnership, all that can get even confusing. So preschool for all, does that apply to early childhood block grant, or are those the same? So what's the same, what's different?
So those are two different funding sources and two different programs. So Preschool for All is for children ages 3 to 5 to get them prepared right for kindergarten. However, Early Head Start Early Head Start Child Care Partnership is a program for 0 to 3, our infants and toddlers, okay, to get them prepared then for preschool. And that's the difference between those two programs.
So when we were saying early Head Start program and early Head Start partnership, those two the same thing?
Early Head Start and Early Head Start Child Care Partnership are the same, right? They serve children 0 to 3.
Okay.
But so does the Early Childhood Block Grant, because it has the Prevention Initiative Program, which is also for ages 0 to 3. Okay, so we get federal funds for 0 to 3 and state funds for 0 to 3, just through different programs.
I think I got you. So I'm going to just summarize here real quickly. So preschool for all is 1, 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Early Head Start partnership, 0 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And early childhood block grant, 0 to 3, and that's federal. No.
No.
Correct me then.
I'm going to correct you. So we have 3 to 5 programs. It's two programs that's 3 to 5 that we fund. It's Head Start, okay, and also Preschool for All. So those are 2 programs that we fund for ages 3 to 5. Now we serve 3 programs for 0 to 3.
You said 3?
3 programs for 0 to 3. Mm-hmm. Early Head Start, which is a federal funding source. Our Early Head Start Child Care Partnership, which is before you today, which is also a federal funding source. And our Prevention Initiative, which is a state resource.
What was the second one? So you said Early Head Start federal,
Mm-hmm.
and then what was the second one?
And then Early Head Start Child Care Partnership. It's a different grant.
Alderman Moore is there.
Okay, and then just the last question. So when I'm looking at these and I'm looking at my dollars, let's start with the one with Chicago Department of Family Supportive Services, EHCCP F19. So I'm looking at that $5 million. which one does that apply to of what you just named?
When you say 5 million, there should be one in front of you for 6.6 million.
Well, I see
And that's
some
for
say
the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership.
Hold on, what I see is slots 1,100, prorated funds amount July through November, 5,117,376. Am I missing a sheet?
That's partnership.
Okay.
It's our partnership, Early Head Start Child Care Partnership.
Okay, so this is the partnership. Okay. And then this one here that totals up to the 81 million, I think that was mentioned. What is that?
The 81 million, so it's our Early Childhood Block Grant, and it comprises of 2 programs, our Preschool for All, as well as our Prevention Initiative.
Preschool for All.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the second one?
Prevention Initiative.
Prevention Initiative. All right, and Chairman, I'd also like to be added to our list, and thank you.
Thank you,
for this
Alderman
opportunity. Thank
Moore.
you so much.
Alderman Thompson.
Madam Chair, I apologize, I was in another committee hearing, so if I missed questions or a summary, but if there's a way we can get a summary of all these programs and the way it's structured through the chair, that would be helpful. And I have a couple quick questions just on with all the preschool, especially Preschool for All, and these funding. So is this funding taking away, or are we receiving any Medicaid funding at all for any of these programs?
Medicaid?
Tiffany Junkins, Department of Family and Support Services. It's not taking away from anybody who's receiving Medicaid. As a matter of fact, our programs are really targeted for our low-income families. And so if they have, for instance, our federal funds, it's 100% FPL, federal poverty level and below, that qualify for our Head Start complement. And for our state resources, it's 200 FPL, federal poverty level or below. So our programs are designed for low-income families.
Because we have a lot in my ward, for example, that are already in daycare. Most of that's all funded with Medicaid. And so these same children now, I know some of my colleagues talked about that, where the city will be competing, I guess, with some of these privately owned daycares. And so are we duplicating that process, or are we not? I make sure no one falls through, but also are we?
Yeah, so Alderman, just to answer your question, I don't believe that we are duplicating services. I think that we are able to offer better quality of services in which we offer when we layer our funding across different funding streams. And then the other thing is that, right, the resources that we have, there's just not enough to go around. You know, we don't have an unlimited pot. There is a limit to what we can do. And there's not a one-for-one match when it comes to the slots that we offer in the various communities. But I think that it can complement other funding streams. So not that it's a duplication of services, that it can really be a complement to it to increase the quality in our programs.
Okay. I can talk more offline. If we can get a summary, and then I can have that conversation offline with you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Thompson. We have some folks here for public comment. If you could come forward. Nashoni Greer.
Good morning, and thank you for having us today. We are here representing Little Angels Learning Center. We are in the Inglewood community, and our question and concern today would be, we're here with the hopes of better understanding the decisions and how they are being made. And we ask that question because we are a part of the universal pre-K rollout. We are a high-performing school, and you know what, I was only going to, if it's okay, I'll only use the charts when I'm going to point to our specific data, if that's okay, our evidence. If not, we'll put it away.
I'm sorry, there's no response back on this.
Oh, the gentleman was saying.
Oh, no signs, I'm sorry.
Alrighty, okay, that's okay. Yeah, because they would use this part of our evidence, but that's okay.
You want
I
to
can just
leave, you want to leave that for the committee as evidence?
I can leave our papers. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes,
We'll
ma'am.
take that.
Thank you, Ms. Carey. Yes, ma'am. Alrighty. It was just going to simply document and show that our evidence is our school in terms of teacher retention. We're at a 90% teacher retention over the last decade, 10 years. We are a part in terms of program compliances, Ms. Jenkins. We, in terms of being a part of Accelerate Gold Circle accredited, we've been that way for the last decade as well, too. We have a partnership with the City of Chicago, CPS, and DFSS as well. We did have the opportunity to meet with the DFSS team, your team members, and at that time, it was shared with us that we just simply didn't meet a certain scoring. So we asked for some specific data in terms of the rubric that was used to measure that, so it could better help us get a gauge on understanding it. And it was shared with us at that time. Scoring will not be shared. So we're just more than devastated, because when you speak of high quality, we meet high quality. We exceed high quality. We have a partnership with Chicago Public Schools where they're building us a new early learning facility. They've invested $2.3 million in our new school. So how do we build a new school with capital, but then we're defunded from a operational standpoint? We just don't understand. The transparency is fractured. And we're just trying to get an understanding, because we know with our mayor, her messaging has been that she will not dismantle, dissolve the community-based partners, because we're feeders for Chicago Public Schools. We've been doing this for 25 years. Our ground experience, she knows this. And the mayor speaks highly of that in terms of her wanting to support our community partner school. And we know she does. But there's a misalignment somewhere. We don't know if it's maybe DFSS is not communicating with the City of Chicago. We don't know. We're just on an assumption. But at this point, our clock is ticking. We have our families, our children here, and then DFSS says, we're going to transition you guys smoothly out. How do you smoothly tear apart families and children when we have continuity of care model that the city has mandated and supported for years? So that's a model that we support as well. That's the reason our parent engagement piece is so strong, because of the niche that we have in fostering our families and our communities. So it's just, I mean, perplexed is not the word, devastating is not the word. I really don't have an understanding of it. We've emailed the deputy, we've met with commissioner as well too, and all we're hearing is you did meet a certain score, but was, if can I show one banner if I please, May?
Yes, ma'am.
Just one. May I have this one? To show you as well too, we received an email from Commissioner back in November of 2018, and the email was, and then she called us as well too. She said, Ms. Greer, we would like to partner with Little Angels and the new facility that you guys are building. Can we write for you guys in our grant as well? And I said, we would love that opportunity, but we're currently partnering with our current partners that we've been with for 12 years. So let me think about it, and I'll call you the next day. I called her the next day and said, yes, we would love to partner with the city. We'll send over our layout of our school. She said, I'm going to send you a template, and you can fill in the plugs, and we did that.
Thank you, Ms. Greer. One of the things that you heard that came up today, to be responsive to you, is that many of the aldermen are asking for an understanding of the criteria. And so I hope that you will stay in touch with the department and with your local alderman for follow-up. Thank you. Victoria Ashley?
Yes, good morning, and I think it's still morning. I actually just wanted to speak as a parent advocate on behalf of Little Angels and Universal Pre-K as a whole. I'm actually a new to Chicagoland for the last just over a year, and I am a registered voter here now, so I do consider myself a part of not only the Little Angels community, but the community of Chicago as a whole. And becoming affiliated and becoming partnered with Little Angels, I have a 4-year-old myself, and in touring a lot of your schools in the CPS system, when we first arrived here, it was really daunting to me to see a lot of the level of care, the level of education that was being provided. What I feel is being provided to my child at Little Angels and through Little Angels was really the sense of a paramount and unparalleled foundation for someone of that age to be able to not only progress and go into a better school system and be able to adapt and go into what you would probably consider a larger school, but it's really troubling to hear the comments about higher quality, higher standard, especially as a new parent, a new transitioning family here. And so I really do hope that as we all and as you all come to terms and come to grips with how we're going to get this situation resolved, we really are looking at how we're going to do a deeper dive. The level of education and the foundation that these children are getting from this community right here, I really have to say as a new parent here, it's unparalleled. And in a community that is underserved and a community that needs this type of foundation, a foundation of ethics, a foundation that is going to allow them to exceed educational levels, not just into grammar school, high school, and into the college level, is really, it has to be brought up. And I really do hope that we can get a lot of these things addressed. I also would like for there to be some clarity, because when DFSS came to the meeting, I was able to sit in on that meeting, and it was spoken to by, I believe her name was Ms. Serrato, that the last RFP was in 2012, not 2017. So if there are some overlaps in how this RFP is conducted and the metrics that are being utilized, where's the confusion? There's a lot of insufficient data that seems to be being given, and I just hope that the deeper dive will definitely add some clarity to that data as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ashley. Letitia Hollingsworth.
How you doing? I have a couple of questions for DSFF.
I'm sorry, you can't ask questions. You can, no, you can make a statement. It's just public comment.
Right. So she stated that the research was, when they did the RFP, that it was by college and university facility. And when you saying college and university facility, they're all, how could you say, I'm sorry, I'm gonna change the subject. I just want to state that my child has been going to Little Angels. I had all my kids there. And for you to tell me that my kids are supposed to be there from 0 to 3 years old and then transfer them over to CPS, I don't agree. I have a daughter with an IEP. She's in CPS right now. I had to move her from CPS and put her into charter school because of CPS. They teaching. I feel like they're just there for funding and not for the care or the support of a child. So I don't agree with what's going on, and I feel like we should have an answer when it happened, but apparently we don't. And I feel like we need an answer now, and we're going in circle consistently trying to find out what was the real cause behind all this. If it was a mistake, please fix it. That's how we ask, but don't defund us.
Thank you, Ms. Hollingsworth. I want to thank Little Angels Learning Center for coming forward today. And I think that you have seen, because you've been here since the very beginning, you have seen that many aldermen are raising the same questions that you have. So give us a little time to look at the issue, and either your local alderman or the department will get back to you one way, up or down. Alderman Moore, do you have a question?
Information, yes, this question. Just to be clear, because it was stated, the last RFP was in 2007. Because I thought, and then they were saying something else. I just want to be clear. I thought that's what I heard when we were giving testimony. That the
Ms.
last
Junkins.
Tiffany Junkins, Department of Family and Support Services. So correction, the last RFP was done in 2012. It was over 7 years ago.
Thank you. The next speaker is George Blakemore. The next speaker is Jada M. Lee.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am a former resident of Inglewood community. Due to adequate daycare, I have been able over the years to return to school, earn an associate's degree from the Kennedy King College community within this school, in that area. I then went to Chicago State University and obtained a bachelor's degree in sociology, and it was because of adequate daycare and the extended hours that allowed me to do this. In return, with my degree, I have went back out throughout the community. I have worked as a family support specialist within daycares in the Gresham neighborhood and the Inglewood community, and as well as a social service support specialist. And one thing that I fear that CPS will not offer these families is the one-on-one family assessments that I have completed with families, and finding out not just that the daycare hours for parents to be able to work to provide, you know, a healthy lifestyle for them and their families, but one-on-one to find out the needs. We get fathers involved. You know, we are able to refer for drug counseling. This is something that I fear that CPS will not offer. Domestic violence intervention. Parents obtaining GEDs. Just this year, I had one parent that I completed flyers for 60 students in a daycare. And within that next week, the flyer was about obtaining your GED and then applying for financial aid assistance to any college that these parents want to go to. And within 1 week, I had parents coming back saying, I have my GED. I'm going to school to open up my own daycare. This is something that early program interventions in the daycares within the community are able to do with the parents. We're able to reach out. We're able to get through. We're able to find out what the deeper needs are other than just a 9 to 5. I've even given referrals for job readiness programs, shelter programs. And this is something, again, that I know with my own children and experience in CPS is something, you know, CPS does acknowledge homeless, right? And the families that are in need of housing. But it kind of stops there versus these early childhood interventions. If we have the parents on track, then the children are guaranteed to succeed. And I've seen it myself firsthand and giving back to the community. So I just wanted, you know, to point that out with defunding these, I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional because I see the day-to-day crisis that these families and these children face. And when they come in, sometimes, you know, we're overloaded. It makes our jobs harder, but it's worth it when you get the outcome at the end of the school year and these parents have obtained even just basic life skills. This is something that CPS does not offer, and I have a 19-year-old and I've never seen that offered.
Thank you very much for your comments. All right, we've come to the end, and what I would like to get is a motion to move this ordinance, the substitute ordinance, forward with the understanding that the discussion related to the early childhood components of the ordinance are for the funding of organizations for the existing year, and that we will move forward with a discussion, a broader discussion with the department about the funding for next year. Yes, Alderman Irvin.
The conversation that I've had with several members would actually like to withhold approval of the Department of Family Support Services, the Early Childhood Block Grant, and the Early Head Start Child Partnership Grant until we get through this process.
I think that might not be a wise move because you're actually impacting the funding for local organizations for this year. Yes, Alderman Austen.
We could pass this out, try to have those conversations between now and City Council a week from Wednesday, see where we are, because I think the full City Council is pretty uniform in how they feel about this, and I think if there's not some positive resolution, they may take that up, or maybe a substitute that separates early childhood from these other organizations.
I think that that's not a bad approach, primarily because we do have some days between now and our full City Council meeting where we could take a deeper dive into this with the Commissioner. Alderman Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry, I went to another meeting and came back, so I know I lost my turn to speak. and understanding that independent auditors did the RFP, is it possible that we could have hearings with them also? I know it was done on a voluntary basis, but I think it would be important to probably hear from them themselves.
I would like to see if we could get together with the department to figure out all the questions related to that, including the role of the volunteer evaluators.
Right. And also add me to the list also.
Will do. Yes, Alderman Thompson.
Are you saying you want to try to get together before the next city council?
Yes. I want to pass this out today because of the impact that it's going to have on existing organizations that are receiving funding for the city for those services. I don't want to negatively impact them, but I do think that we need to look at going forward how this program is put out. Yes, Alderman Urban.
Does the passage of this item, if we don't pass the item, does that just maintain the status quo?
If this ordinance is not passed, we won't be able to execute budget revisions for the existing contracts that we have. And so those funds would be returned to the federal agency if we cannot execute those budget revisions and spend down the contract or spend down the funds for that grant.
But are these the questions that we are looking at, the concerns that we have now are based upon this funding, or is it some different funding?
It's the next year's
the next
funding.
round.
The next round of funding?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Y'all got to tell us so we can understand.
That's-
All right, very well.
Yes, Alderman Thompson. Yes, Alderman Moore.
I just want to be clear. So in terms of what Little Angels is down here fighting for and their funding cut, passing this has no bearing on it. It's the future.
It's the future.
Absolutely.
All right, just want to be clear.
We want to close out the end of the
Yes.
year by fully funding the organizations that are currently providing services to our youth, our young people in the city of Chicago in these two areas.
Okay, so
We're
they were
gonna
not
look-
shortchanged in this process?
Not
Okay.
here.
Right. Thank you.
So these 1,100 slots that you're speaking of today came about how then? If there wasn't a part of the RFP, how did we arrive at these 1,100? Because that would seem to be how the conversation.
So the Department of Family and Support Service conducted a separate RFP to select these agencies. They received additional money for the next 4 months of services. And the Department of Family and Support Services can talk to how those slots were selected, but those agencies all submitted proposals in which they identified eligible slots.
And Tiffany Junkins, DFSS. So as the Deputy Director mentioned, the passage of what's in front of you today affects agencies currently funded today, including Little Angels. So if we don't pass that, then it's going to disrupt their funding now. This is funding through November 30th. What's going to be in front of the entire City Council with the 2020 budget is going to include then the RFP funding. And to me, I think that we have enough time to be able to have those discussions before that budget.
And this was outside of the process that you initiated with the RFP, just for clarity.
This portion of funding.
Okay, all right, very well, thank you.
Can Alderman Thompson moves the motion for passage of this ordinance. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we will hold this and perhaps report it out pending discussions with the Department of Children and Family Support Services. With that, I call can I get a motion for adjourning the meeting? All those in favor say aye. The meeting of the Budget and Operations Committee is over.